Hi, economics learners. Today's grade 12 topic is going to focus on the topic of microeconomics. So with microeconomics, we're going to look at two subheadings. It will be perfect market and government intervention in market failures. Under market failures, these are the following headings that we'll look at. We will look at profit maximization. We will also look at the supply curve of an individual business. We will also look at the short-run equilibrium positions of a perfect market, as well as the long-run equilibrium position of a perfect market, as well as the shutdown. So remember, we're going to do two subheadings. Then the next one will be market failures. Under market failures, we will look at government intervention to control market failures. So we will look at direct control, imperfect markets, minimum wages, maximum prices, minimum prices, taxes, subsidies, redistribution of wealth, as well as government involvement in production. You're going to need the following resources. Make sure that you have your calculator because we're going to use it to calculate different types of profits and losses. You will also need a writing pad as well as a pen and a pencil for our drawings. You will need any approved CAPS textbook and Mind the Gap study guide. So the concepts that we will use during the presentation of perfect market will be total cost, average variable cost, marginal cost, short run or short term, long run or long term, as well as economic profit, economic loss, normal profit, shutdown point, total revenue, marginal revenue, and lastly, average revenue. The aim of a business is to maximize profit. It is not just to make profit, it is to make the highest profit. However, this will depend on the cost of production. Remember, when a business is producing goods, it has to incur total costs, which include fixed costs and average and the variable cost. So with fixed cost, it means those costs which do not increase with output. They don't change or they don't decrease, they remain the same throughout. And with the variable cost, these are the costs which will change with output. If we produce zero, the variable cost will be zero. So if we produce more, the variable cost will go up. So both the fixed cost and the variable cost together, they will determine whether the business will be able to make profit or not. Here is a hint. If you look at our NSC examination guideline, you'll find that possible essays are outlined in this document. So today's topic of perfect competition or perfect market, we will deal with an essay. So this is the essay. You will be required to examine in detail the various equilibrium positions with the aid of graphs. Take note with the aid of graphs. And then you'll have to explain economic profit, economic loss, and normal profit. Where? In the short run. Take note of the short run. You'll have to explain normal profit with the aid of a graph. Where? In the long run. So lastly, you'll have to explain the shutdown point using cost and revenue and also explain it graphically. So I'm going to take you through the steps where you'll be able to draw these graphs and also interpret them correctly. First, let's start with profit maximization. With our previous lesson, you have learned that businesses in this type of a market, perfect market or perfect competition, they are price takers. They take the price from the market, and their demand curve is a straight horizontal line. It represents demand, it represents average revenue, it represents marginal revenue. So looking at this graph, we're going to look at profit maximization using what? Using the MR equals to MC approach. So when we look at profit maximization, we will use the MR equals to marginal cost approach. So we will assume that 5 rand is the market price which was taken from the industry or from the market. Then this straight horizontal line represents D equals to MR and equals to AR. So we want to know the point where the business will be making the highest profit. So you already see the horizontal curve, the D equals to MRAR. Then the MC curve is represented by this upward sloping curve. So at a point where the MR and MC intersect, that is where the business will make the highest profit. So by looking at this graph, the MC and the MR, they intersect here. That is where MR and MC are equal. This is the point where profit will be maximized. So what does this mean? This means that the business will produce output number 4 so that it can maximize profit. But at output 1 up to output 3, it means that the business can make profit, but not the highest profit. So that is why quantity 1 up to quantity 3 will represent the point whereby MR is greater than MC. The profit, you can see, they're starting to increase, but the profit becomes the highest at this particular point. Any point to the right of the profit maximization point means that the business should not produce, because profit will start to decrease. That is when you will see that output 5, 6, and 7, you will see that the MC curve, it's lying above the MR curve. What does that mean? It simply means that profits start to decrease because MR is less than MC. So the only output that will take the business to maximum profit is output 4, where MR is equals to MC. Let's look at profit maximization again, but this time we are looking at the TR. TR equals to TC approach. So if we are using this approach to check where the business can maximize its profit, then you still remember your grade 10 and 11 skill of drawing graphs. You'll have to plot a vertical axis and a horizontal axis and label it accordingly. Then your total revenue curve will be an upward sloping curve. You see, it starts from 0 up and rises upward. What does this mean? It means that as the business is producing, the more it is selling, quantity 1 up to quantity 6, the profit will keep on rising and rising. So the total cost is represented by this gray line. You can take note that it doesn't start from 0 like the total revenue. Why? It is because it is starting somewhere above 10 at this point. Remember, total cost equals to our total fixed cost plus our total variable cost. So whether the business has produced nothing, the cost should be incurred. We must still pay the rent for the property. We must still even pay the insurance for the premiums for the insurance. So as a result, the reason why the total cost is starting here is because of the fixed cost which must be incurred, whether we produce 0 or we produce more goods. So I want you to look at this curve. From this point, it is moving upward. It is above the TR curve. Again, at quantity 5, from quantity 5, it is also rising above TR. What does this mean? It means that the total cost is above the total revenue. So total revenue is less. The business is receiving less revenue. So the business is making a loss. So at quantity between 0 and 1, the business is making a loss, and between 5 and 6, the business is also making a loss. Look at point A and point B. At point A and point B, the total cost curve and the total revenue curve intersect. What does this mean? It means that total revenue is equals to total cost at point A, and again at point B. Total revenue is equals to total cost. So the business is not making profit and the business is not making a loss. We're saying that the business is operating at a break-even point. What you spend equals to what you receive. So the interest here is profit maximization. Where do we make the highest profit? Let's look at output 2 up to output 5. Do you notice that the total cost is lying below? It is lying below the total revenue. What does this mean? At this point, it means that total revenue is greater than total cost. The business is receiving more revenue than it is spending. So the profit here is positive, but where is it maximized? The profit will be maximized at a point whereby the vertical distance between the total revenue and the total cost is the greatest. So if you look at quantity number 3, the business is making profit, but the vertical distance is not the greatest. Let's look at output 4. With output 4, you look at the distance. The vertical distance is the greatest. This means that profit will be maximized at quantity 4. So if the business produces up to quantity 4, the business will make the highest profit. So there's no need to produce output 5 and 6 because the cost will start to rise and rise until it's above the total revenue. You have learned that the price of a perfect competitor is equal to its average revenue and to its marginal revenue. So the demand curve is a straight horizontal line because the price was taken from the market or from the industry. So what about the supply curve? In grade 10, you were taught about demand and supply. So those two words, you know them very well. You even know how to draw the graphs. But here, when we're talking about the individual supplier, then you start wondering, what is the supply curve? Because now I know that the straight horizontal line is the demand curve. So look at this graph. You will plot it vertically, it will represent your revenue, your cost, or your price. And then horizontally, it will represent your quantity. So when you draw this graph, make sure that you start by plotting your price. In this example, our demand curve, which represents the price, will be here. It will be D equals to A R equals to M R. So let's assume that at the price of 30, that is where the demand curve is, and that is where AR is equals to MR. Then you will draw your average cost curve, which will lie. Its position will be above the average revenue. So the brown graph curve here will represent your average cost curve. Then you will draw your MC curve, which will look like a Nike, the shape of a Nike. It will move downward and rise again, and then you will label it MC, and you will ensure that it cuts across the AC curve at its lowest. Then you will draw below your average revenue, the AVC curve, which is represented by the yellow color. So we want to know what exactly is the supply curve. The supply curve is represented by the MC curve, but not all the portion or the whole part of the MC curve is the supply curve. No, the supply curve will start above point D. It is represented by this solid line. Somebody's asking herself that, but ma'am, why? It starts here, but you only selected point D, C, B, A as our MC curve. The reason is that the business cannot produce anything at point E because this price is too low. It is below the market price of 30, meaning that the business cannot be able to pay for all its total cost or for all its fixed costs and variable costs. So there's no production at point E. Nothing is supplied. The business will start to supply at a price of 20 where the MC curve is solid. Hence, we're saying that this is the supply curve. Why is the business supplying from point D? It is simply because some businesses, they will still operate, even if the price is below 30. They will operate, but the income that they will receive, it will only meet their average variable cost. So as from where the businesses are able to pay their average variable cost, they will start supplying. Hence, this is the supply curve. So the solid line is our supply curve. Allow me to link the topic of supply curve with the topic of shut down. Shut down. Okay. In a perfect market, you remember that there is a characteristics which says that there is easy entry and easy exit. When can the business exit? By shutting down. So I want to show you the point where the business can shut down. Remember, I said that we are not producing here. At point E, already the business has shut down because we cannot meet all our expenses. So the shutdown point will be at point D. This will represent our shut down. The business should close. Why? Because we can only meet our average variable cost. We're not able to pay our rent, our bank loan, the premiums of the insurance. So at this point, the business should shut down. So hence, the supply curve starts above the shutdown point and moves upward. Okay. Let's talk about perfect market in the short run. When we're talking about short run, we're not talking about that duration where maybe you can borrow money and pay it within 1 year. No, we're talking about that period of production whereby factors of production can be varied, but one can remain fixed. Remember, when you start a business, you need 4 factors of production. You need entrepreneur, you need natural resource in the form of land, you need capital, you need labor. So 3 of these factors of production can change. To vary means can change, can either increase or decrease. But let's say the amount of land where our business is, we don't expand, we don't buy more land, we don't build more factory or another plant, but we can increase workers and use less technology or use more machinery and employ less workers. So this is what it means when we say that certain factors of production should be variable, whereas only at least one should remain fixed. In our example, land will remain fixed. We don't expand, we don't build another plant, then we will say it is fixed. I want you to look at bullet number 2. It says whether a business make a profit or loss, it will depend on the location of the average cost curve in relation to the market price when the business is in equilibrium. So I will take you through these steps when we draw the graphs, which will be showing whether the business is making a profit or a loss. What is important is the position of the AC curve. Where the AC curve lies, it will indicate to you as to whether the business is making a profit and what type of a profit, or whether the business is making a loss. Still in the short run, we all know that perfect market in the short run will make economic profit. However, this is not the only type of profit that can be made. That is why we are saying there are several profit or loss possibilities. There's a possibility of a perfect market, the individual firm or supplier, to make either economic profit, to make normal profit, or to make economic loss. When majority of businesses will be making economic profit, there will be those some which can make a normal profit. It is possible in the short run. And it is also possible for some businesses in the short run to make a loss. So hence we say there are possibilities. Let's start with economic profit in the short run. Remember the essay type question. If the examiner asked you to draw the graphs which illustrates short-run equilibrium positions, then you will draw the graphs and even explain them. So you want to draw the graph for economic profit, you will even draw the graph for economic loss and normal profit. What is economic profit? Economic profit refers to the profit that is made in addition to normal profit. What does this mean? This means that the business will incur expenses to produce a product. The product will be sold. The business will make income or receive revenue. So after paying its cost, there will still be extra money for the business. That is what the addition to normal profit means. The business shall be able to pay for its cost or expenses and still remain with extra revenue. Economic profit takes place when average revenue is higher than average cost, or when total revenue is higher than total cost. It simply means what the business is receiving is higher than the expenses of the business. So when you draw this particular graph, I want you to take you through certain steps. You will draw your vertical axis first. You label it cost, income, or price. You draw your horizontal axis. You label it output or quantity. The first curve that you must draw, it is the average and marginal revenue curves, our price. So this 12 rand will represent the price. But remember, if you use real values, you'll be able to even calculate the real economic loss. So the 12 rand will represent the price, and then the straight line will represent the demand curve, which is equals to average revenue and marginal revenue. So AR is 12 rand, MR is 12 rand. The next curve that you must draw is the average cost curve. You can call it AC or you can call it ATC, average total cost. So why do you have to start with the average cost curve before the MC curve? It is to make sure that your MC curve cuts your AC curve at its lowest. If it doesn't cut it at its lowest, your graph will be technically incorrect and you will lose marks. It shouldn't cut it at this side. It shouldn't cut it at this side. It must cut it at its lowest. So next step is average cost curve. Where a business is making economic profit, average cost curve will lie below the AR. Like in this example, it drops up until a point where it will be below the average revenue. So what does this mean? It means costs are lower. At this point, costs are lower, but average revenue is high, it's lying above. Then you will draw your MC curve, which will rise upward. At this point, it should intersect with MR. So you should determine where it intersects with the MR. So where MR and MC intersect, this is the profit maximizing point. You can label it a different alphabet. It can be A, it can be B, C, or D, or E, but the one which is easily remembered is an E. If you write an E, you'll remember that MR and MC are in equilibrium. They are equal. So after determining the profit maximization point, you should determine the profit maximization quantity. With the pencil that you have now, you will drop and draw downwards up until you reach your horizontal axis. Then you will label it as Q. But in this example, I've given it a value of 130 so that we can be able to calculate. You don't end there. You still use your pencil, you go back upward until you touch your AC curve. This point B, you can label it point F. It simply represents the cost of producing the goods. You have touched the AC curve. Then draw backward up until you reach your vertical axis. This will represent your cost. You can write C. It will represent your cost. In my example, I've written 10 because I want us to calculate it. So this area, CPAB, will represent economic profit. You can now shade it. It can be shaded as the area where this business is making economic profit. A learner somewhere there is saying, but ma'am, I see that you didn't shade this area. We still are making economic profit. Yes, you are making profit, but it is not the maximum profit. We will produce and sell up to quantity 130, which takes us to the highest profit. So if you want to produce more, it means that your cost will increase. Look at the slope of the AC. From the profit maximization quantity or point, the cost starts to increase. So 130 is the quantity that will take us to the highest profit. So I want us to calculate how much is this profit. I don't want us just to shade this area. I want us to calculate. So when we calculate the amount of profit that is earned, you will need to know this formula by heart. You will say total profit is equals to total revenue minus total cost. But still, you need to know how to calculate total revenue and how to calculate total cost. For you to calculate total revenue, you will say price multiplied by quantity. In our example, what is the price? I said that 12 Rand is our price. How do you see it? Because of the straight horizontal line. It is the price that we took from the market. So we'll say 12 Rand multiplied by 130. It will give us 1,560. For you to calculate the total cost, you need to have the cost first. So what is our cost? We said that this represents our cost. So 10 Rand is our cost. You'll say 10 Rand multiplied by 130. 10 Rand multiplied by 130, it gives you 1,300. Then you subtract your economic profit will be 260. Another way of calculating, you can say price minus cost multiplied by 130, it will give you the same answer. 12 minus 10 Rand is equals to 2 Rand. You multiply it with 130, it will still give you an economic profit of 260. So be careful whenever you are drawing the graphs. With economic profit, take note that the AC curve, at a certain point, it must just lie below the AC curve. And also take note that the figure, after calculating, the figure is positive. Always when you calculate economic profit, it must give you a positive figure or a positive answer. And avoid giving us the answer only. Show us how you came to the answer. For this step only, for showing that 12 multiplied by 130 minus 10 multiplied by 130, it will be 1 mark. And then for subtracting 1,560 560 with 1,300, which is our total revenue, total cost, you'll get another mark. And then for your answer of 260, that is where you will get only 2. Can you see that if you give us the answer only, you will get 2 marks and you will forfeit the other 2 marks. Let's move to normal profit. What is normal profit? Normal profit is the minimum earnings required to prevent an entrepreneur from leaving the industry. When does it take place? It takes place when AR. It takes place when AR is equals to AC. When AR is equals to AC. One can also say that it takes place when TR is equals to TC. So looking at this particular graph, like I've given you a skill that you draw your vertical axis and your horizontal axis, you label both quantity, price, and then this you know that it is our price because it is taken from the market. It is represented by the demand curve. The second step I said it should be the AC curve, the drawing of the AC curve. So when the business is making normal profit, the AC curve will lie tangent to the AR. It will prove that AR equals to AC. So it means that the business is not making a loss, the business is not making a profit, the business is operating at a break-even cost. You spend 500, you receive 500. So let us look at it graphically. So when you draw your AC curve, which will always be an U-shaped curve, it will drop up until to that point where it is tangent. I talked about tangent. It is tangent here. At this point, AC and AR are equal, and then it will rise again. Then you will draw your MC curve. Make sure that it intersects correctly at the lowest part of the AC. Then you label it MC. You label this point SE, meaning that MR and MC are equal here. This is the point where profit can be maximized. Then you use your pencil, you drop down until you touch your horizontal axis. Then you label your axis, which is quantity. But in this example, the quantity is 280. So you want to know how much is your cost. You go upward until you touch your AC curve, backward up until you reach your vertical axis. You'll realize that the same 12 rand, which is your price, the same 12 rand, which is your average revenue, it is also your average cost curve. So I want us to use this information to calculate. Okay. Same formula, TP equals to TR minus TC. Let's calculate the total revenue. Price multiplied by quantity. Our price is 12. We multiply it by 280. It gives us 3,360. Again, we need to calculate the cost. What is our cost? Our cost is still 12 rand. We say 12 rand multiplied by 280. It gives us 3,360. When you subtract, your answer will be a 0. So always take note that in the short run, when the business is making normal profit, the profit after you have calculated, it will be a 0. Why? Because total revenue is equals to total cost. And also take note that the AC will lie tangent at this particular point. Let us look at the last possibility, which is economic loss. Okay, there are certain businesses which can make a loss in the short run. You saw how they can make economic profit, how they can make normal profits. There are those that can make economic loss. Economic loss takes place when total cost is greater than total revenue. So total cost will be higher than total revenue, or where average revenue is also lower than average cost. So when you draw this graph, remember the position of the AC or the position of the ATC plays an important role. In this graph, the AC curve will lie above the AC curve. So our straight horizontal line, which is the demand curve, will equals to MR equals to, and also B equals to AR. So you will realize that the AC curve is lying above the AR curve. So those who are speaking Ishitsonga, they will say the AC curve ifamba moyeni. So it is lying above the AR. So you will draw your axis correctly and label, but the first starting point is your price, which is 50 in this case. Okay, then you will draw your AC. Let's see how ifamba moyeni, itafamba moyeni here. Okay, it is lower than the AR. Then you will plot your MC, which will intersect with MR at point E and intersect with the MC curve at its lowest. What else must you do? Okay, you go back to point E where MR is equals to MC. But this time we're not going to say this is the profit maximization point. Why? Because the business is making a loss. If the business is making a loss, the terminology here changes. We will call it loss minimization point, meaning that this is the point where the business will minimize its losses. Mostly when businesses are minimizing their losses, they try to produce less. So there is no use to produce more. So this is the quantity that can be produced. You draw from the equilibrium point up until you touch your horizontal axis and determine your profit maximizing output. In this case, it will be 100, but you can label it Q if you like. Okay, then you go upward again from the profit maximization point up until you touch your AC curve at point F, and you go backward until you touch your vertical axis where this will represent your, remember I said that the F represents the cost of production. So in this case, the cost of production will be 90. Then you will shade this area to say that the area from 5090 F and E, this area you shade it, it will represent your loss. But losses must also be calculated. Okay, when we calculate same formula, by now you know it by heart. Then you will say price multiplied by quantity. Where is our price? This is our price. Where is our quantity? This is our quantity. It will be 50 multiplied by 100. And then when you calculate your total cost, then, your average cost, then you'll say 90 multiplied by 100. Then you subtract. I know that your maths teacher at primary told you that it should be the highest value which will be subtracted with the smallest value. But in this case, no, there is no mistake. Your total revenue is 5,000. It's less. Your total cost is 9,000. It's more. It shows you that this business is spending more, but it's receiving less revenue. So after you have subtracted, your answer will be a negative 4,000. Please indicate that it's a negative 4,000 because the business is making an economic loss. Always when you calculate economic loss, you will realize that your answer is a negative figure. There's things that I want you to take note of. With economic profit, the moment the business is making economic profit, it is a signal, it is a warning to those people out there who wants to start businesses but they don't know which market to enter. It signals to them that it is profitable, enter this market, and they will enter and produce the same product. Economic loss. With economic loss, for those businesses or sellers who are in the market, it signals to them to say, hi, the business is not making profit. You must make a decision to quit it warns or signals a business to exit. But with normal profit, because we are able to pay the expenses of the business, it doesn't say we must leave. We can remain in the market and operate until we deal with the cost issues. When the business is doing well, we will make economic profit. Perfect market in the long run. We are done with the short run. Now we're looking at the long run. What is the long run? Remember, in the short run, I said your factors of production, you will vary your entrepreneur, you will vary labor, you will vary capital, but land will remain fixed. But in the long run, it is that period of production where all the four factors of production can be varied. It means that you can have a plant 1, plant 2, plant 3, plant 4. You can expand the business and have many branches. You can buy more land and expand. You can use more machinery. You can use more workers or less. Each plant can have an entrepreneur. So the factors of production, all of them will be variable. There are no fixed variable production inputs here. So in the short run, we said most businesses, they make economic profit, and there'll be those who will make a normal profit and an economic loss. For me to explain long-run equilibrium position, you need to know first where it started. It started in the industry. In the short run, the price was here. It was high. It was, let me give it a value of 200. And this DD curve represents original demand, and the SS curve represents the original supply. This is the original equilibrium point. So the market price in the short run was 200, and the profit maximizing point or equilibrium point is Q in the long run. So what happens is that because of they are price takers, in the long run, this price of 200 will be taken by the individual firm, and that's when the demand curve will no longer be downward sloping. The demand curve will be a straight horizontal line. So the business is making economic profit. This is the price, this is the quantity, and then you will plot your AC curve, which will lie below the average curve. This time we will label it SAC. What does it mean? It means short run average cost, because we are dealing with the short run. And then the marginal cost will intersect with the marginal revenue at point E, and we will label it SMC, short marginal revenue, short run marginal revenue. So this will be the equilibrium point where MR and MC are equal, or the profit maximization point, and if you draw downwards, this will be your profit maximizing quantity. Then, because another characteristic of this market is that there are many sellers and entry is easy, this economic profit will be a sign to others out there to say, you can join the market. It is profitable, you can join. And as they join, look at what will happen to the industry. The supply, because they join, they supply the same product. The supply will shift. It will increase to the right. We will have a new supply curve, S1, S1. And then we will also have a new economic equilibrium point. We'll have a new equilibrium point here. Then, because only supply has changed, when demand is remaining constant, demand doesn't change. It's only supply that is changing. Then the price will be forced to go down to P1, or it will be 100. Quantity will also increase from Q to Q1 because many sellers have joined the market. Then what happens to the individual firm? Because many sellers have entered the market, so the market share for each will be small. And the business will no longer make economic profit. The business will make normal profit. Let us look at it. We said quantity change from Q to Q1. Yes, it is the truth. This side, quantity will change to Q1 because the price has dropped. This is the new market price. This is the new demand curve. Then we will have an AC which will be tangent, an AC which will be tangent to the AR curve. But this time, because we are talking long run equilibrium position, then the AC curve will be labeled LAC. Then again, the MC will intersect with the MR at point E1. And then this is our profit maximization point, but the MC curve, we will label it LMC, long run marginal cost. So all in all, we're trying to say to you, as much as the business can make economic profit in the short run, because by then there will be not so many sellers, but in the long run, it will make normal profit, and there's no need for other firms to enter. And those who are inside the market, there's no need to leave because minimum earnings are made here. This was explained. So going back to the shutdown point, where I've indicated to you that the solid line represents the MC curve. The business will shut down at the point whereby the AVC and the MC intersect. They intersect at point D. So what I want you to take note of is bullet number 2. Take note that actual shutdown should only take place when total revenue is less than total variable cost and when average revenue is less than average variable cost, or where there is an intersection between the AC and the MC curve at point D. Okay. All these steps I have explained. Now we are moving to the next subtopic. We are done with the perfect market. Look at what is happening here. I see Josephine. I see Josephine at a particular store, which I cannot mention. She has a list of the things that she wants to buy, but it seems like they are not available on the shelves. She keeps on moving and moving. They are not available on the shelves, meaning that her demand cannot be met, her needs cannot be met. She won't be able to satisfy her needs because the market is not providing her with what she wants. This takes us to the topic of market failures. What is a market failure? Market failure occurs when the market is not operating efficiently. If the market is not operating efficiently or resources are not allocated efficiently, this means that the market will fail. For example, when insufficient production of a good occurs and there is a shortage, sometimes you find that too much of a certain product which is not needed is oversupplied. So such cases can cause market to fail. What causes market to fail? Market can fail because of externalities. Certain businesses, when they produce goods and services, they harm the environment. They either harm it via water pollution, environmental pollution, or land pollution, or via air pollution. So, but at the end of the day, they will be making profit but not being accountable to the damage that they have caused to the environment and the damage that it has also made people, animals, and plants to die. So such productions which is not healthy or friendly to the environment can cause the market to fail. Number 2, the market can fail because of missing markets. You'll find that the private sector is not interested in rendering a service or producing a product which will not yield profits. So remember, the aim is to make maximum profit, the aim of businesses. So private sector will not produce a product or render a service where it cannot maximize its profit. So that market will say it is missing. Another reason you find that they cannot produce because that particular operation needs huge capital outlay to be started. Then you'll find that the product is not available. Or the product can be available. The private sector can produce it, but charge a higher price, and you'll find that some people cannot even afford. That can cause market to fail. Number 3, imperfect competition can cause the market to fail. Why? We have monopolies, which are imperfect markets. We have oligopolies and monopolistic competition. They have a tendency of limiting supply and making the price to go up. Oligopolies have a tendency of coming together and fix the prices and make prices to be high. Remember, if prices are high, we won't be able to buy more or afford. Another thing is that you'll find that the oligopolies or monopolies, they have a way of blocking entry, making competition not to be easy. Block entry so that other entrants won't be able to enter or will find it difficult to enter. That can cause the market to fail. We have a lack of information. So the imperfect markets, again, you'll find that oligopolies, for example, they don't have market information or complete information. You'll find that the workers are not aware of jobs elsewhere. You'll find that the entrepreneurs themselves, they don't know about costs of producing certain products. They don't have information about the production of a certain product. You'll even find that consumers, they have a lack of information about certain products. So that can also cause the market to fail. Immobility of factors of production, where you'll find that land is fixed. Our railway lines are fixed. You will find that it is difficult to adjust this factor of production to the changes in demand. Another factor can be technology, where you'll find that the technology, new technology that is applied, it is not suitable in the country. And you find that the workers or the industry is not adapting well to the new technology. Again, you'll find that workers, labor is a factor of production. They don't have information. So as a result, it becomes slow or difficult for labor to move elsewhere. Labor becomes immobile. Lastly, is the imperfect distribution of income and wealth, where you'll find that the gap between the rich and the poor is still wide, or where you'll find that we have many people who are earning low income and few people who are earning high income. So those imbalances can also cause the market to fail. Imagine if you have your needs, but you don't have money, you don't have the resource to buy the goods. That can cause the market to fail. We have what we call mnemonic. With mnemonic is a way to make you remember headings easily or to remember subheadings easily. With the market failures, you can look at the first letters of the causes of market failure and make a word which can be easy to pronounce. With this example, causes of market failures, you can use Emily, where you will know that E represent externality, M represent missing market, I represent imperfect market, and so forth. So this is a possible essay. It is a possible essay for 26 marks. And when the additional part is added, or additional question, it will be 40 marks. So with this type of an essay, remember with our essay, I said that in the previous lesson, you need to write headings, and then under each heading, you explain. So if you remember this, Emily, you'll be able to know that, oh, my first heading will be externalities, and then you discuss everything under externality. My second heading will be missing markets, then you discuss up until the last one. Government cannot just allow markets to fail, as it will be bad for the people in the country. They therefore intervene to limit the consequences of market failure. So it can therefore be said that government intervention is a positive consequence of market failure. This is an advantage of a mixed economic system where if the market is failing, the government will intervene. Again, government intervention in market failure is a possible essay, and it is outlined in the NSC examination guideline. When you discuss this essay, you must discuss it under the following headings. It will be under direct controls, under imperfect markets, under minimum wages, maximum wages, minimum prices, and under taxes, subsidies, and redistribution of wealth. And lastly, it will be under the government involvement in production. Let us look at each of these interventions. Let's start with direct controls. The government can directly control where we find that we have those businesses which in the process of production, they harm the environment. We will say that it is called negative externality. So the government can control that by using laws or by using legislative framework to control the business that generate negative externality. In South Africa, potential dangerous gases, air pollution, environmental pollution are controlled by laws and regulation. And again, we know that cigarette is harmful for the health of the smokers and even those who are not smoking. So in South Africa, the cigarette advertisements are illegal. Imperfect market, remember what I said they can do. I said they can fix prices, they can supply less and cause the price to go up, they can block competition, and that will make prices to be high. And that can affect us as consumers because we might be exploited. How can the government intervene? The government uses its laws on competition to prevent exorbitant prices charged by the firms in order to ensure that entry to the market is free. Where the entry was blocked, entry will be free because of government intervention. To prevent harmful collusion, the government can investigate businesses which are charging abnormal prices, and legal action can be taken against them. The government can also encourage foreign competition so that which helps to keep the prices of goods low. Remember, we have the Competition Policy and the Competition Act. So the South African government uses 3 bodies to regulate imperfect markets. It uses Competition Tribunal, Competition Commission, and the Competition Appeal Court. Government can intervene by using minimum wage. In order to achieve what? Do you still remember the causes of market failure? One of the causes is that income and wealth are not distributed evenly. We still have those few who are rich and many who are poor, and those who are earning higher salaries and those who are earning low salaries and those without a salary. So the government can intervene by using minimum wages. Minimum wages are used in order to assist those unskilled workers. For example, our domestic workers and our farm workers. Usually, when they bargain for an increase in wage, they lose. They are often overexploited by their employers. But the government can protect them by introducing a minimum wage. This must be explained with the use of a graph. Let's look at this graph. You know how to draw your demand and supply curve. It will be your vertical axis, it will be your quantity. But this time, this axis does not, you write it wage rate, don't write price. It will be wage rate, and then this will be quantity. Let me start by saying, let's say this quantity is 10,000, 20, 30, and then this wage rate is 1,000, and then wage 1 is 2,000. Okay, what is happening here is that DD represent the demand for labor. Who is demanding labor? Those farm owners. the employer. So the DD represents the employer. SS, who is supplying labor? The workers. So the supply curve will represent the workers. At the point where both supply and demand meet, this will be the equilibrium point because the demand and supply will be equals to 20 at a wage rate of 1,000. So 1,000 is too little to satisfy basic goods and services, or to even buy basic goods and services to satisfy the wants. So the government can announce that the minimum wage is 2,000. What does this mean? It means that the employers can no longer pay the workers 100. They must 1,000. They must pay them a wage rate that is above the equilibrium point. And it has advantages and disadvantages. If the wage rate increases from 1,000 to 2,000, it means that there will be more people who are interested to work as domestic workers or to work as farm workers because the wage rate is interesting. So supply will increase from 20 to 30. People who will need work will increase. But what about the demand? Will the employers demand workers? No, the demand will drop from 20 to 10. So what does this mean? It means that if farmer A, let's say I'm the farmer, I used to pay each of my workers, I have 2 workers, I used to pay them 1,000 each. It means that at a wage rate of 2,000, I have to retrench 1 because now I must pay them 2,000. Labor is expensive. Then I need to pay 1 worker and get rid of the other worker. I've touched this. Let's look at maximum price. With maximum price, the government set a maximum price below the market price to make goods to be more affordable. We call it a price ceiling. If this is the ceiling, it means that you cannot charge a price that is higher than the ceiling. So in this example, let's say originally the price was P, and this is the demand curve and the supply curve, they are equal here. This means that the quantity will be Q. But the moment the government introduces a maximum wage, it means that the price will drop. What does the law of demand say? It says that if the price drops, we will buy more. So demand will increase from Q to Q2. And then what does the law of supply say? It says if the price is less, they will supply less. So supply will drop from Q2 to Q1, meaning that the difference between Q1 and Q2 will be the shortage. We will be demanding more goods because we are motivated by the price, but the sellers will be offering less. And if there is a shortage, what is going to happen? The black market will develop. Somebody will see an opportunity to sell the product illegally. Okay. Let us look at the minimum price. The government can introduce a minimum price. A minimum price is that price that is set above the market price. What is our market price here? P is our market price because this is the point where demand and supply are equal, and this is our equilibrium quantity. But if the government introduces a minimum price, it means the price will be higher than the market price. What is that the government wants to achieve? The government wants to encourage production of certain essential goods. The government also wants to boost the profitability of businesses. So the minimum price is aimed at encouraging more profit for the business and to encourage more supply of an essential good. So in this case, what does the law of supply say? If the minimum price is above, it means it's high. If the price is high, we will buy less. As consumers, our demand will drop from Q to Q1. The suppliers, yes, they'll be encouraged, they'll be motivated. They will supply more if the price is high. Then the supply will increase from Q to Q2. Then we will have a surplus, whereby there's a lot of goods in the store, but we as consumers are not buying, or we are buying less. So what is going to happen to the surplus? The government will buy the surplus and dump it in other countries and sell it at lower prices. Alternatively, the government will buy the surplus and destroy it. What a waste. Okay, the government can intervene by charging tax. What does taxes do? Government will use tax to discourage either production of harmful products, the demerit goods such as your alcohol, your cigarette, your unprescribed drugs. The government can also use taxation to punish those businesses which are causing air pollution, water pollution in the process of production. So the tax has a tendency of increasing the price and make the cost of production to be expensive. If the cost of production are high, the business will supply less. Let's look at it graphically. Originally, this is the market price. Demand and supply meet at point E. This is the quantity. But if the government charges tax, the price will go up. Look at the supply curve. It will move to the left. It will decrease. Quantity produced will drop from Q to Q1. But this is an opposite when we look at subsidies. Subsidies, they don't push prices up. They reduce prices. Whereby you find that there is a private school, for example, in a certain community, but the school fees is very, very high and majority of children cannot attend school. The government can subsidize. In South Africa, it is happening. The government will subsidize the private school to make the school fees to be less. Even if it is a product, the government can subsidize products just such as milk, wheat, and maize, which will make it affordable for the poor. We're trying to close the gap between the rich and the poor. So, this will be our price, and this will be our equilibrium point. This will be the quantity supplied. But if the government introduces a subsidy, the price will drop from P to P1, and the business will be motivated to supply more and produce more. Quantity will shift from Q to Q1. Redistribution of wealth. The government, again, can use traditional method by levying of various taxes, whereby government can use a pay-as-you-earn, progressive tax scale, to charge more tax to the high-income earners and the rich, and then use the money to provide services for the poor. The government can also use VAT as a tool, whereby certain basic products will be exempted from VAT. Government can provide free services such as schools. Remember the missing market as a cause of market failure. Government will provide certain services for free. Certain liters of water we receive for free in the rural areas and in poor areas. The government will also provide schools where a school fees is not charged. Free hospitals, etc. Government will also provide services in kind where you saw people receiving groceries or food parcels now during the COVID-19. That is a service in kind. Even at our schools, the government is providing feeding schemes. That is service in kind. Government can also provide cash benefits to the poor. Government can also subsidize merit goods such as those schools, private schools, art, cultural events, etc., so that the service can be available to those who cannot have access to it. Government can use redress methods, whereby government can use a broad-based black economic empowerment to empower the indigenous people of the country so that they can be involved in the economy. Government can use affirmative actions so that there is equality in the jobs when it comes to gender and racial groups. Youth are empowered through learnerships. Women are empowered to be more involved in businesses. Government can also use land restitution, land redistribution, and property subsidies where people receive the RDP houses. So lastly, as government in production, what we are saying is that the government in production can provide certain services like public goods, which is community goods, public goods which are collective. So the collective goods simply means that we will have to pay for them. Collective goods means our refuse removal, our SABC, where we have to pay for TV license. They don't come for free. So we need to pay tax for the government to be able to provide us with these services. So even your parastatals, the government in production owns shares in Eskom, South African Airways, SABC. So that's how the government will try to close the missing markets. So always remember that when you discuss this in an essay, use graphs for minimum wage, maximum price, taxation, and subsidies. I hope that this will help you while you study during this COVID-19. This brings us to the end of the lesson. I thank you.